Computerized Start is brought to you by my awesome patrons on Patreon, and by your tips and memberships on Ko-fi. These and other channel supporters make my live streams possible. You too can become a channel supporter with tiers starting at just $1. And as always, thank you for all your support, including sharing, chatting, liking, and subscribing. Now roll that famous logo animation! Good evening and welcome back to Computerized Start Live! I'm your host, Justin D. Morgan. I changed topics after Dave's stream last night because I was looking at the Saturn card that came out of computer during Dave's stream, and I realized I might have the parts to fix it, so hope y'all don't mind the change in topic. Let's see here who we have in the chat. We got SadMac356. Hi, SadMac. We have Thomas Armstrong. Hi, Thomas. We have Jack68K. Hi, Jack. We have Kevin. Greetings from Nebraska. Hi, Kevin. We have Rudy's Retro Intel. Hi, Rudy. We have CMD Big Mike. Hi, Big Mike. And let's see here. And we have Jesse I8386SX. Hi, Jesse. All right, the new May tip jar link in the description. And we'll get to the Saturn card after I'll admit I saw the storm driving home from work and it got windy, but the storm didn't actually pass over our house, my house, so don't know where it actually was raining potentially, but I decided that I was just not going to risk it given my internet troubles sometimes when it storms, so yes. So anyways, we have the we have the upside down retro chip tester, because when I fixed the problem with this capture card last week, let's see here, there we go. The rotation did not make it back into OBS. There we go. We're hearing double here for Justin's. Oh. That's weird. Yet another side effect of the Blackmagic card causing trouble. Alright. Yes, I had to mute the Blackmagic device. Yeah, I had two mics on. I didn't realize it. It's because I had trouble with this capture device last week. And someone suggested, well, try deleting it and re-adding it. And, well, that caused problems that lingered to tonight because the card, that didn't restore the card's functionality last week. I have no idea what was wrong with it. Rebooting the computer fixed it, but then I guess I forgot that I was going to have to change a few things. I did remember to set the deinterlace, though. Alright, so anyways, yesterday on Dave's stream, I was looking at the Saturn clone card that came with computer. In fact, it's got the same branding as computer's motherboard. You can see all these logic chips that I have drawn green check marks on because they tested good. I do have this one here that tested bad, which I will demonstrate. I will demonstrate that it is now working tonight. Go figure. Okay, so I guess this logic chip is not actually bad. Don't worry, there's still plenty to test. So let me erase my red X of shame off of the logic chip. I will go ahead and reinstall it. I will draw a green tick mark on it as soon as the isopropyl dries, but alright, so I guess that chip is actually cooperating tonight. Okay. So, being inconsistent. Yeah, I did test it twice, and test twice, install once. And it was inconsistent. I mean, I guess what I could do, because it was testing inconsistent yesterday, or, yeah, yesterday. Yesterday was Sunday. I do have... Here we go. I guess since it was testing inconsistent, we'll go ahead and swap it out for a 74 LS02. Here we go. This one should be a nice one. It's from an... All right. We'll just go ahead and swap it out. We'll call this one questionable because it was testing very intermittently yesterday. We'll go ahead and swap it out. All right, so we'll go ahead and replace that. That's easy. There we go. All right, so now we got to the RAM. So during Dave's stream, I was able to test 5 RAM chips plus one replacement. I think this might have been testing when Dave's stream ended. And the memory chip that was here tested bad. The one that was here tested bad. The one that was here tested bad. That one tested good. And the one that was here tested bad. And this is actually a replacement chip that tested good. So let's go ahead and basically turn this into a fancy mem test stream. All right, so this is a common DRAM. And it is a 4164. And I have a couple of... So the original chips are NEC, and the replacements I have are national. And Thomas Armstrong says brands count. Well, I don't... they are not the same speed. The originals are 300 nanoseconds, and the replacements are 150 nanoseconds. I do not have... And we have Sylvestron. Hi, Sylvestron. Welcome. I don't believe the mismatch of speed will be... Well, Rudy says faster is okay. Yeah. It is okay to... Yeah, it should be okay to mix the speeds because... it's an Apple II clone. It's not that sensitive to all the memory timing being the same. We have Jean-Francois Paré. Welcome. I love computer content. Yes. So we're testing some potential replacement DRAMs to at least get the board back to having all the chips in it. And then we'll continue testing the rest of the DRAMs. I'm picking up where I left off on Dave's stream yesterday. Also, I do have the March test turned on for these memory chips, so this should be a very thorough test. And I do have more of these national memory chips. So if I do find more bad ones, Jack's asking, does the Saturn Card clone have a name? Unfortunately, they just called it the 128K RAM card. Very not creative. But it is a clone of the Saturn Systems 128K RAM card. I mean, in fact, I think it is pretty much a clone because I think all the chips are in the same place. It's just, I think Saturn Systems actually labeled what all the LEDs mean very clearly, and this clone does not. Jesse says, very on brand for computer. Yeah, so I think computer would have included this card. Maybe as an option, but it has the same branding. Oh, there we go. 4164 test passed. All right. So we'll go ahead and install this RAM chip in the board. I'll go ahead and get another RAM chip testing. And then I will get the green paint marker of I tested that. There we go. Now on Dave's stream, I did make a prediction that I was going to find at least 8 bad RAM chips. And at the moment, I am doing pretty decently towards meeting that prediction because I have found 4 bad RAM chips. Sylvestron says, the RCT Pro is good for testing RAM, but not perfect. I've had failing RAM pass in the RCT, but once the chip's actually in use at speed, it fails. Yeah, that is definitely a potential problem. However, I think if it fails in the retro chip tester, then it probably is bad. Although I think I was watching some video by, it might have been More Fun Fixing It. And I think he might have had a case where a DRAM tested bad and it actually worked. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. Anyways, yeah, I'm pretty sure, though, if the DRAM fails in this, then it probably is a bad DRAM chip. But yeah, if it tests good, it's not guaranteed to work at speed. So, yeah, I'm binning the ones that failed, because, yeah, if the RAM chips fail at the low speed that this is running at, then it's not going to run at in an Apple II. John Francois says, I have a 64K expansion card in my 2E, and it's all MT RAM. Ugh. Thomas says, always love parts with faulty chemistry. Surprisingly, it's still working, says Jean Francois. Yeah, I mean, the later MT RAM actually works pretty good. They, I guess, got through their process issues. Yeah. Also, I do know if you get one of these retro chip testers, by default, it does not enable the March tests, and I enabled the March tests just to try to get a more thorough test. But then again, not a guarantee that they'll run at speed. Yeah, fortunately, I lucked into a seller on eBay, the place where I buy the things I later regret. But that seller had tubes of DRAM. They were in the US. They had tubes of DRAM. They were asking a really good price, and I basically bought like I think I bought 5 tubes of the 4164s because that's what they had. And as far as I can tell, because you can even look at how the chip is, those new chips are marked, those I don't think have been rebadged, because if they were a China sand and remark special, the entire surface would be sanded down. That, you see how it, yeah, that is why I bought one tube from them to inspect them, and then I bought like 4 more when I confirmed that, yep, these appear to be the real deal of new old stock RAM chips. Thomas says, I get my 4164 from old ATI Vantage cards. I don't, I do look for memory cards to buy to get RAM chips off of, but I hardly ever find them at what I would consider a reasonable price, so I just usually end up having to go for trying to find new old stock chips. Hello, Mr. Tech Gadget, welcome! Alright, it will certainly be nice to get the RAM back in this card to then start with the next one in line that I haven't tested yet. Yeah, 4164s are not made anymore. It would probably be possible to make some board that you could replace all these DRAMs with SRAM. I would suspect you could probably make an adapter board and pull it off, but that's not my area of expertise. And in fact, though, there are modern clones of this card, because I have one from Garrett's workshop. And as far as I can tell, it has all the same logic on it. And I think the only reason why there's not a CPLD on it to replace this large chip here, I think this chip is only used for the refresh circuit, and that's SRAM, so it doesn't need a refresh circuit. But yeah, that's how time progresses. All this fits on this, and it's an SRAM. Oh, there we go. There we go. That replacement DRAM. Sylvester says, I prefer the old one. Yeah, I know. I guess it is, the old one is cool. And I did take a look once. I had some RAM upgrade cards for an Apple IIe. The footage is sitting somewhere on my NAS. That this one RAM card claimed that it would save energy over top of the other one. And we'll just say that at least my kilowatt meter was not able to discern a statistically significant amount of power savings between the two RAM cards. So I'm sure there is some power savings by using an SRAM over DRAM, but I don't know that it's as big as... for 428K, I don't know that it's a shockingly huge amount. Thomas says, I think I got a 16 meg card for my 2GS. Oh, I've got I think I got one from Garrett's workshop for my 2GS, and it's like, yeah, it's 8 or 16 megs. Sylvester says, is it battery powered, though? No, computer is AC powered, so quite honestly, it doesn't matter. Oh, no! We have another bad chip. All right, I think I'm just going to start I'm going to test the ones that are on the card, and then that'll tell me how many more DRAMs I need to get. And quite honestly, depending on how many of these I replace, I may just like replace the rest of them too. Like if I somehow manage to have to replace like most of them, I may just finish the job. All right, that one I kind of mangled getting it out. Hey Joe, welcome. We are MIM testing. Yeah, just watch. The one I mangled will actually pass, and then I'll have to unmangle the pins. Thomas is asking, what are they using to decode on the board? I don't know what they're using to decode on the board. I honestly don't know. I'm presuming that's what some of these logic chips do. Because the thing is, if you look up the data sheet for this chip, oh good, I don't have to unmangle the pins to get it back in the socket. The chip failed. This is like a 16K address decoder. And this is 128K RAM, so there's obviously other logic to decode which page of RAM you're using. Thomas is asking a 71 for I'm a software guy, Thomas. I don't know. I really don't know what they're using to decode. Is there a 74157 on the board? On the original board, I do not see a 74157. On the clone board from Garrett's workshop, I'd have to pull out my microscope. Although I think the Garrett's workshop design is on GitHub, so someone could pull up the schematic to figure it out. Thomas says, oh, my guess is 74157. It's a 24-pin IC. No, that's an MC 3242 AP. Which maybe that's a Motorola clone of a 74157. But if you look up the chip that's on this board, the data sheet for that chip says it's a 16K address decoder. So I haven't looked at the schematics for this board. I don't know if schematics for this board exist. I haven't gone to look for them. All I know is that the board doesn't work and I'm finding failed DRAM chips left and right on it. So at the moment, my guess during Dave's stream is I was going to find at least 8 bad DRAM chips. I'm to 6 right now. We're to 7 now. Joe says, not to steal the show, but the JCM-1 single board computer still works. I'm happy, that is all. Yes, we now have 7 bad DRAMs. Now, what would be interesting is if the bad DRAMs were just limited to the one bank. But somehow, I doubt that's the case. Joe says, bad 4164 chips. No, that never happens. Unrelated question, are they MT RAM? No, they're not. They're NEC. Remember, this is computer. Computer was There we go. That's 8. Computer was stored somewhere that required me to replace all the sockets on the motherboard. Now, these sockets don't look corroded, but that's probably because the card was actually installed. So whatever was on the motherboard sockets, I guess maybe didn't get on the sockets of this card. Actually, Joe, I had one chip in the first bank that passed. But yeah, so it was effectively a bad bank. But now I've already found one bad chip in the next bank. Thomas says made in Hong Kong by a Japanese company. Uh, yes, Joe, that could be what was on the sockets. Spare Commodore sockets. Well, this one's going further. Ooh, we actually made it to the March test. Yes, I believe the same company that made this card made Computer's motherboard because it's got the same branding. Although it's not yellow silkscreen, but it is branded MCA, made in Japan. And that's the same branding that's on the motherboard. So, yes, as far as I can tell, it was the same company that made them. In fact, I think the Z80 card that's in Computer was also made by the same company, but the only evidence that I have for that is that it has the same color stickers on it that I've seen on other parts that were in Computer. So that's not as big of a slam dunk because the Z80 card's not branded. Yeah, the Z80 card has no branding on it, so it could just be a generic Z80 card. Yeah, this PCB is art. I think the original Saturn card looked better because they actually labeled what the LEDs mean. But I think this is pretty much a copy of the Saturn card. Go look up a photo of the Saturn Systems 128K RAM card, and it will pretty much look exactly like this. I think this is a direct clone. Oh, there we go. We have two little passing RAM chips. Ah. Oh, Jason was watching Grey's Anatomy. Yes, that show is still on. I didn't realize it was still on. But welcome, Jason. Formerly known as the um, artist Gut Bomb. Oh, Joe says, I need to go stir my silica gel beads in the oven. Sadmax says, I'm surprised it's still on. Jason says, it's a terrible show. No one should watch it. I just watch it out of 20 years of momentum. Oh, well, we have another loser. I'm going to have my work cut out for me when I actually test the replacement chips. So that now we're up to 9 bad DRAMs that were on this board. And we have Socket Wrench. Hi, Socket Wrench. Socket Wrench says to Gut Bomb, or to Jason, you'd think they'd have found all the parts of Gray by now, and there'd be nothing left for anatomy to study. Thomas says memory is good as mine. Yeah. Jason says next season will be the last one. Yeah, I think at this rate, if these memory chips are failing at the rate I think they're failing, I'm just going to replace all of them. Yep, looky there. We got another failing RAM chip. So now we're up to... I've lost count. 12? 10. We're up to 10 bad RAM chips. 12 tested, the originals, 10 bad. Joe says, Graham and I watched As the World Turns, recorded on VCR for years, kind of like Grey's Anatomy. Don't worry, if I decide to replace all the DRAM chips out of the interest of sanity, I will keep the ones that test good. Or if I have to replace a single chip somewhere else. Mr. Tech Gadget says, this is like the retro version of Trina's MemTest 86 streams. Yes. "13 tested, 11 bad." I think I now see why this card would fail Computer Inspector so quickly. Jason says, Sadback, don't worry, I was only joking. No announcement has been made, and I think the actors enjoy the $1 million per episode, or whatever, so they'll keep going forever. Mr. Tech Gadget says, more blinking lights for sure, yes. Yeah, I even have mine customized with my logo on it, because I needed something to dim the bright LEDs under there a bit. Wow. And actually, for some reason, these memory chips, a lot of these memory chips are failing at somewhere around address 600. It's almost like... Yes, I should put some bigger resistors on the LEDs, but... Mr. Tech Gadget says, if you could only replace the resistor. By the time I got this thing together and realized how bright those were, I don't want to take it apart to replace the resistors. So I went for the lower tech process of putting a sticker over them. I mean, it is a nice logo backlight. Oh, looky here. We got a little further on this one. Maybe we have a good RAM chip. Could call it a nightlight, yeah. And at least they're not blue LEDs. Yeah, good RAM chip. Jack says, I feel like you should be writing a date when they allegedly tested good. Well, actually, at this rate, as few of them that have tested good, I'm just going to replace them all. I will keep the ones that test good, but at this rate, I'm just there have been so few of them that have tested good. I'm just going to replace them all so that there's all matching RAM chips on the board. Jesse, it'd be more like Computerized Start Nightlight, only $399, assembled in USA. Um, Also doubles as a chip tester. Sylvestron says, it's a nightlight though, so should it be changed to computerized sleep? Um, I think I prefer analog sleep. Thank you very much. I can I can dream up enough on my own without needing a computer to come up with more weird dreams. All right, so that was like RAM chip number 3 that don't worry, I have plenty of 4164s. We will be able to populate this with RAM. Oh, thank you, Jack68K. More 4164 RAM chips. Thank you. All right. Got a little bit towards the May tip jar. Thank you, Jack. All right. And once it looks like our final count might potentially be four four good ones. 4 out of 16. That's Thomas Armstrong says, "Oh yes, may the 4th be with you." Yeah, it looks like um yeah, it looks like a 4th might still be with me. All right, I don't want to prematurely call it, but if this one passes, then a 4th of my RAM chips passed, which is a pretty bad percentage. And the 12 that failed will go into the, yeah, 4th of the RAM. That's a horrible percentage. Oh, Joe says, shall the Pascal be with you by today? All right, let me go grab another tube of DRAM chips because I'm going to need them. So, for May the 4th day, it looks like I had a 4th of the RAM pass. Wow, that's... Hi, Francois, welcome. All right, there we go. So, there we go. I got the 4 original RAM chips to pass on my spare memory chip foam thing, and now I'm about to bury um the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bad 4164s that were on the Saturn card. 12 bad little RAM chips. Thunderclap. Lightning strike. I'll tell Count Von Count to pipe it down next time he's counting near my Saturn clone board. Alright, so the weird thing about these replacement memory chips is they have something on them. I think I managed to spill some liquid or something in the tube, so I'm going to, before I put them in my retro chip tester, I am going to spray some contact cleaner on them to clean their contacts, and then we'll test the candidate replacements here, make sure they actually work. Oh yeah, I forgot about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Doot 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 doot. Now I have a song stuck in Joe's head, and he's going to type something in the chat. Also, I'm sure Children's Television Workshop is now claiming a melody in my song, or scream, or something like that. Yes, I failed to recognize the number 12 was significant in more ways than one there. Jason says, "Don't worry, Children's Television Workshop doesn't exist anymore." Oh, I never like to assume that intellectual property rights completely vanish. Only that if the original rights holder goes away, that someone else is there to claim it, like BMG Music Group. Uh, yes, current events, current eventing. Yes. If you know my history with playing things that are that should be fun to play, and then another group butting in where they don't belong, like uh, like or not BMG, like Universal Music Group deciding that they're going to claim the PlayStation startup song, then yeah, um, for all I know, Universal Music Group bought the rights to the Children's Television Workshop songs. Joe says gets a copyright strike from the Pointer Sisters for the 12 song. Yeah, Jack says probably don't want to find out what copyright troll owns the Children's Television Workshop stuff. Yeah, it'd be my luck. It'd be Universal Music Group. This is a Apple. Yeah, Rudy says this is getting crazy copyright nonsense. Yeah, I did that live stream where I repaired PlayStation 1s and I ultimately muted the audio that Universal Music Group was claiming because A, it was stupid. B, my channel's not big enough to have got the attention of actual Sony. And C, they don't own the sound, so why should they make money off of my live stream? Because I was testing PlayStations, not playing the album from the artist that sampled that clip and put it in their song. It'll make me think twice for streaming PlayStations. But then again, I know other people that have done it and had no trouble. And the only thing I can figure out is maybe it had something to do with the fact that I didn't have a direct audio capture. Rudy says they use AI bot to find samples clips. Yeah. For all I know, it was either because I didn't do a direct capture, so it wasn't a clean audio pickup of the PlayStation startup sound. If that makes sense. Or if I just happened to be the random live stream that it did pick up on. Thomas says apparently Sesame Street still owns it. Jason says, didn't you also get copyright trolled for extremely distorted Doom music on the McDonald's computer? No, I got trolled for the the Doom music played through a wavetable sound card. Yeah, it matched the wavetable when I played it through the wavetable, and actually that capture didn't have a lot of noise in it that I remember. But yeah, that was also Universal Music Group. However, I've been able to play other music from Doom not through a wavetable sound card and no problems. So Jesse says YouTube trying to claw back their 38 cents. I think it's just Universal Music Group not selling CDs and songs, and so now they're resorting to anything that looks like it might slightly match and whatever they can get away with. And oh, look, you're repairing PlayStations. Our artist sampled a PlayStation. Well, we'll claim your 38 cents. Yeah, it works till I mute the offending audio. At least that's still an option. Yeah, Jason says, I can't believe my NegCon video hasn't been claimed. I play a bunch of PlayStation game FMV intros in it. Yeah, and that's the thing. It wasn't. I would have figured if anyone was going to claim it, it would have been Squaresoft for the intro music to Final Fantasy VII, but no, it was Universal Music Group and Sony's property. All right, well, I am being thorough. I'm testing the replacement RAM, so there you go. Even though I had 4 that passed, I decided I'm just going to replace them all because at at that point it just seemed silly to have mostly new chips and some old ones. So that everything is nice and aesthetically pleasing. Yep, I'm just going to replace them all and keep the ones that tested good. So if I got something where I just need to replace one chip, I can use the ones that still tested good. Joe says to Jack, money now, fallout later. Yeah. Oh, that was probably to Jack's statement. I get defending egregious copyright violations, but what exactly is the point of making people hate your corporation for being absurdly litigious? Yeah. Yeah, Sad Max says there's no audio is the source of a sample in the claim song option. Yeah, no, there's not. Um, yeah, there's also not an option to. There's also not an option for content ID incorrect match and to let you explain what the correct match would be. So yeah, you just gotta whatever content ID says it matches is what you're stuck with. Joe says, I need a yacht. Put into my yacht. Buy more Blue Scuzzy. Thanks. Jesse says, if you don't give these billions to Sony, our CEO won't be able to buy his private island. Oh, well, the funny thing is, Universal Music Group isn't Sony. That's the wild part about who's matching the PlayStation startup sound. UMG does not own the PlayStation startup sound. That would be Sony Computer Entertainment. And as far as I can tell, Sony does not own Universal Music Group. Thomas says, I can get a deal on rowboats. Well, I could probably tell you where you could get a deal on some jets. If anyone's in the market for a jet. Um, Now, granted, you only have one choice of color right now, and you'll be competing with Spirit Halloween for the because I'm sure they're going to be trying to open up a Spirit Halloween in those jets. But yeah, you can try to call Spirit Airlines. I'm sure they got a few jets they need to offload now. And I hope none of you all are stuck in an airport trying to get a flight because Spirit Airlines went out of business. But yeah, that was awful. I mean, but yeah, their jets are. Thomas Armstrong says they are classy yellow. Yes. Um, Call now. Supplies are limited. Spirit Halloween is chomping at the bit because all they got to do is paint Halloween on the side of the jet, and boom, instant new Spirit Halloween store. Yeah, I'm torn on the Spirit Airlines story because it's yeah, I don't know. Thomas says never had them in Abbotsford Airport, but we get Mexican Airlines. Jesse says, you know, Spirit Halloween could use an international airport. Yeah, I kind of knew when they were starting to say that they were probably going out of business but I did not imagine that Spirit would just up and like call it quits at 3 a.m. on Sunday. Although I think they were calling it quits Saturday evening because they started canceling flights. Although those might have been the flights that were at risk of being in the air after 3 a.m. Saturday. But Thomas says they saw the gas bill for Monday. They might have. I mean, no, absolutely no warning. And in fact, that when they were canceling flights Saturday, I've heard news reports saying they were actually booking people on flights they that the agents might have even known were not going to happen. Like, I don't know, it's quite honestly kind of cold what they did. But then again, I don't know. Maybe they were like absolutely positively out of money and had like they might have been done for. Thomas says they left aircraft to be moved back with no fuel. Now, maybe that's why they just suddenly ceased operations. Maybe they just ran out of money. It's like, Jason's asking, what's the difference between a poorly dressed man on a unicycle and a well dressed man on a bicycle? Attire. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That has been Dad Jokes with Jason. Socket Wrench says there's no good way to wind down an airline. They assume they're all too big to fail, but we're in the era of smash and grab capitalism. I guess at least if there's anything good to come out of it, I did see the news story where the Southwest Airlines did honor a Spirit Airlines captain that was not able to take his retirement flight because the airline shut down. So I think that was a very nice small gesture that they did to allow him to have his retirement flight, even if it was on a Southwest Airlines plane. But that was a very nice small gesture. Yeah, Jason says JetBlue and Spirit tried to merge, but it was blocked. This was last year sometime. Yeah. Yeah, ultimately that wouldn't have helped. They would have just been absorbed into JetBlue and there would have been layoffs. Thomas says it's like Jim signs up people while closing the doors the next day. Yeah. Rudy says more will fall sooner than later. Yeah, there would be a couple airlines that would be on my I'm concerned for them next, and JetBlue would probably be on my list of how well are they doing. And some of the other budget airlines. Yeah, I'm thinking if JetBlue had bought Spirit, honestly, given how those usually work, the result would have been, yep, there would have been some immediate layoffs. They would have streamlined operations. And would the combined airline have shut down this past weekend? Maybe not, but I would have probably tagged that combination probably not lasting much longer. Yeah, I remember that, Jason, that JetBlue was a breath of fresh air 20 years ago. Nothing like that now, though. Thomas says, I think most of the budget airlines of Canada have merged out. Yeah, Jean Francois says even bigger airlines are cutting costs. Delta will no longer serve snacks for short flights, less than 350 miles. I saw that. I did see that. Although I think if you're um if there's first class on that short flight, I think first class still gets snacks. Because I think they did say they're not making changes to first class, and they are, I think, upgrading snack service on some slightly longer flights. They did make a couple other changes that might be positive for other flights. Yeah, I haven't flown commercially in ever, and I don't really have a desire to. It seems like I'd just rather drive. Ugh. Rudy says soon only standing room only, no seats. Yeah. Jesse says I don't miss flying. Yeah, I know they're supposed to be safer. All right, here's where we are in replacing the RAM. I think the nice thing is I think all these chips I have are the same date code, so it'll be like the RAM never failed. Thomas says, I don't know, the drive to the airport is high risk here. Um, I would point out that apparently I don't want to ever drive anywhere around Newark Airport. I'm glad the guy driving that bread truck was okay, but I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions before the NTSB has a chance to issue their report, but there is at least one thing that I think I can safely assume that the plane was a bit low. Now, why is another question. At least one news article did admit there were wind gusts at the time, so it's entirely possible that that might have been a factor, but yeah. Yeah, I don't want to be driving anywhere around Newark. That's scary. Hey, Game Doc, welcome. We have Game Doc 04. Yeah, Newark is a dreadful place. Okay, so I subscribe to Captain Steve, and there's like, I think, 3 airports that seem to always be airports he's talking about, and Newark is one of them. What the other one, what the other two, I think, is JFK and San Francisco. Or is it San Francisco? Or is it Los Angeles? Or maybe it's 4. Yeah, George something 5 says Steve. Yes, with 3 E's. I guess it'd actually be 4 E's. But yeah, 3 E's in a row. Yeah, Jesse says O'Hare sucks too. But yeah, Captain Steve doesn't have to bring up O'Hare as much. But yeah, O'Hare is an awful airport. Oh, Jason says my aversion to flying has nothing to do with safety or anxiety. I'm just too tall to ever be comfortable. Yeah. Kevin says I'm 6'6". I don't think I'd ever be comfortable in a plane. Yeah. Jack says I fly pretty regularly. It's fine. I'm sure I'd be fine once I made it through TSA and all the joy and fun that brings. Thomas says Chicago has good food. Yes, Chicago has good food. Jean Francois says the only reason I've flown short haul in the past is because train service sucks for most of North America. Yeah. Oh, Jack says, but I'm not too tall to be comfortable. Jesse says I had to sprint in sandals when I had a connecting flight in LA. I had 10 minutes to run it because O'Hare incompetence. Yeah. All right, there we go. Another fabulously working RAM chip. I can tell you this. I don't remember what eBay seller I bought these RAM chips from, these 4164s. I want to say it might have been the there's a seller in Withville that sells chips. Husker Fan, I think's the eBay account name. I'll let you all use your imagination as to potentially why his eBay account is Husker Fan, but yeah, I think that might be where I got these chips. No, I don't think I did. Now that I think about it, it was from somewhere else. I bought other Logic chips from Husker Fan. These I think came from somewhere else because I just remembered how they came packaged, and they were packaged very differently from when I buy chips from Husker Fan. The tubes were wrapped in aluminum foil. So hopefully we'll get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more chips tested in the retro chip tester, and then we'll see if this fixed this RAM card. We'll put it in computer. Oh, and I guess I did replace, for anyone that just joined, I did replace the 74 LS02 that was intermittent. Rudy says, I had my private pilot's license for 20 years, but it's too costly now for any air travel. Yeah. Thomas says, I've got memory from the arcade shops that are new old stock, including Musk. Yeah, I think I could almost kind of smell what those stores would smell like. I always think about there was this hardware store in Roanoke that was like walking distance from our house, and I remember going in there, and it was very much the smells like the old time hardware store. They had the hardwood floor, and you just got the mix of smells from all the different departments right when you walked in. So yeah, I can still smell that when I think about that store. It's that very unique smell that you don't get when you go into a modern home improvement store. Probably partially because the lawn and garden department's outside. I'm sure if that was inside, it would probably more smell like the the old time hardware store. Yeah, hardwood on dirt. Thomas says, yeah. Um, Jesse says those are usually the good hardware stores. Yes, those usually are the good hardware stores. The guy that owns it is running it. He knows where everything is, and if he's out of it, he actually will call you when it comes in, when it arrives. In fact, he could probably even give you a better delivery estimate of when he'll get it than the courier can, because he's just done it for so long. Yeah. Yeah, Jack says the carcinogenic air in old hardware stores. Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't good for you, but you know you're in one of the good hardware stores. Hi, Joseph Norris. Welcome. Just stopping by to say hi. Had a long day work. Had a long work day and can't stick around. Have a good night and have fun. All right. Thank you. All right. So we will need. So if this one passes, I'm going to need 3 more chips. I'll go ahead and kind of spray some contact cleaner on them just in case there's um whatever was got on them from being shipped in the tube. I don't know if I'm the one that like spilled something in the tube, or if it's like that when before they shipped. And it could have been just however the manufacturer packed the chips. It could have been some lubricant for um, inserting and removing the chips in the tube. Because the interesting thing was these DRAM chips didn't come in a plastic tube; they came in a aluminum tube. So it's possible whatever it was on these chips just could be some lubricant to facilitate getting the chips out of the tube. It may be just some dielectric grease, but Jesse says, "Hey, we need number 540 screws. Random hardware store says I got you." Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Sadback says, though if you need an 1/8 inch elastic cord, you might have to look around for a while. Yeah. I mean, yes, the old timey hardware store does have limits. They may not have the newest, latest, greatest, but whatever they do have is going to work, and there's a good chance they're going to have the obscure bolts you're looking for, because it's quite possible they've been around long enough to know that the item you need to fix and a bunch of other stuff that also need that bolt is prime for stocking. As Sakarin says, my local ace is like that. They actually know me by name, and the cats like me. Ah, yeah. Yes, I would say that like your local Ace or your local Do It Best or wherever your local hardware store is probably your best bet today of assuming you don't still have one of those old-timey hardware stores. I know they are still around. You can still occasionally find them, although they're getting fewer and farther between as their owners retire and their families may not be as interested in running as a hardware store as they were. But yeah, your local Ace or Do It Best or one of those is probably going to be your closest to the old timey hardware store. And Jesse says this was a Do It Best in De Pere that had the obscure size 5 screw. All right, we'll see you later, Rudy. Up, missed sad or Jack says Ace is where I buy gallons of 99% IPA. Yeah, no, Ace is the place with the helpful hardware folks. Thomas says we have one of those stores. The building came by rail and was set up. Yeah, I was looking at the street view of that street in Roanoke where that hardware store was, and I knew the hardware store had closed. It probably closed shortly after I moved to Charlottesville, and yeah, it's not a hardware store anymore. In fact, I kind of scrolled through the when I scrolled through, I kind of didn't recognize. I'm not sure which address it actually was, mainly because the whole row of buildings is, I think, in a historic preservation block, so they can't tear down the facades. So I actually, they're all old buildings. Could not remember which one was the hardware store, but it is no longer a hardware store. And Kevin says, some places it seems like they go out of their way to not help you. Yeah, Soccer Wrench is commenting on things that the Ace stocked for Metro Surge. Yeah, that is unfortunate. Some places don't go out of their way to help you. Hi, Dave. Welcome. So, Dave, you remember my prediction I made on your stream yesterday where I said at least 8 bad DRAM chips on that board? There were 12. 12 bad DRAM chips. Out of 16. Dave says, wow. Francois says, oh, 12. Yeah. So I have set aside the 4 that still work according to the retro chip tester, but out of a desire to have a nice looking board, I went ahead and I'm replacing all 16 RAM chips. Because at that point, Dave says, that's crazy in chips. Oh, yeah, I did find a 74 LSO2 to replace that one that was flaky. Luckily, I have a parts board that had one on it. Francois says, I'll have nightmares of bad DRAMs now. Good night, Francois. Sylvestron says, yeah, replace them all. The last 4 might start missing their buddies and getting ideas. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. So, yeah, I just figure might as well, because I don't know. It does seem really weird that 12 have failed. That actually seems like a really high failure rate, which kind of tells me something might have happened to the card. Although the interesting thing is the logic chips still work, but then again, it is possible that something happened to the card and maybe the DRAMs were more sensitive to some overvoltage than the rest of the logic chips. Yeah, Sylvestron says really high failure rate in quotes. Yeah. Oh, Sylvestron, then MT, hold my RAM. Yeah. Well, normally I don't see any C's fail at this rate, but I don't. Although the thing is, I had like 40. What was it? 40 some chips that I had to replace on computer. I mean, there's all the chips I replaced on computer, and now the 12 RAM chips from this card that failed are also in the bag because they were part of computer. So Jack says maybe those RAM chips are past their expiration date. Thomas Armstrong says yes, card pulled when the power was on. That is quite possible. I mean, that is quite possible. Someone did something silly like that. And I mean, I had wondered if maybe the original power supply was overvolting. So it's possible that maybe the original power supply did overvolt and maybe took out the RAM chips on this board with it. Now, the one thing I did forget to do, I did find one of my SD card readers, if anyone's wondering. It turns out I had taken it all the way upstairs. Of course, I forgot to stick it in my pocket to bring all the way back downstairs, so. I don't know what I've done with the one that I haven't found yet. I bet it fell on the floor. There we go. Yeah, and I think all the chips I've installed, I think they're all the same date code. So not that that really matters a whole lot, but it looks neater. The only reason I bring up the SD card readers because I think there is a diagnostic program for the Saturn card. I do not have it written to a floppy disk, but I could put it on the floppy MU, but that would require me to go get the SD card adapter. Or find the one that's floating around my workbench somewhere. There we go. We have a full 128K RAM on this board. There we go. I'll check the last RAM module on stream. There we go. Move the retro chip tester to the side. Let's see here. See if I can't grab computer. There we go. I had computer waiting to the side. There we go. There's the MCA made in Japan branding on the motherboard. And for anyone wondering, yeah, made in Japan. I don't know if it actually was made in Japan. Hello, hardware hacker. Welcome. All right, so we will put the Saturn card in slot 0. Because that's, I think in order for it to act as a language card, it has to be in slot 0. I believe the Saturn card can be installed in other slots, if I remember. And I think you can actually have more than one. All right. But to use it as your language card for loading integer basic, it has to be in slot 0. All right, and I've plugged the floppy drive in. RAM card's installed. Let me grab the computer inspector disk. Oh, computer inspector is not in the floppy drive. Because right there it is. All right. Computer inspector. It's a totally legitimate backup copy. Although probably practically abandoned at this point. Oh, you know, it would help to turn on the smart outlet. There we go. All right, there we go. We've got computer inspector, machine identification, Apple II Plus with 64K of memory. There we go. We do see the language card in slot 0. That's actually the Saturn card. All right, that looks correct. So let's run the RAM test. Oh! Needs repair. Error FD at 00D01A. Well, isn't that special? Um, Sylvesteron says, absolutely legitimate. You're not the kind to copy that floppy. Kevin says, MECC. Thomas says, slot 0 is a good start. Yeah. All right, so we've got other problems. Well, actually, for anyone thinking that, so I'm going to pull the card out. So now we only have the 48K of memory on the motherboard. Yeah, they it didn't show up for Oregon Trail, but yeah, they're back. It has to do with video modes. Thing is, I don't think it's main memory because if we run this on main memory without that card installed, we don't get an error. And in fact, because I know some of y'all are like, well, Computer Inspector's not a very good memory test, and well, that probably is true. Um, I've got something here. So I have here a ROM card, and it is hardwired to run that ROM. So we'll put that into slot 0. Interesting. Huh. The ROM test is saying that we have 0 page errors. Oh, hardware hacker. All right, we'll see you later. Jack says no errors without the card installed. Bad logic chip. Or the chips on the expansion card getting selected when they shouldn't and clobbering the bus. I don't know. I just put the ROM card in. That's dead test. And huh. Dead test is like that's weird. Dead test is like dead test is having none of this. Yeah, that one is the bad bit. Thomas is asking, this was the board attached to the power supply that blew the caps on the negative rail. No, this was not. This was the board that just had a bunch of chips fail, and I had to replace like all the sockets. Yeah, that represents all the 8 bits. Now, Jack says I'm too used to working on 32-bit computers. All right. All right, this is just weird. Okay, so every time I power cycle it, we get a different number of bad 0 page bits. We could. I have tested the chips in computers so many times I'm getting tired of it, to be honest. All right. Let me see what bad bits there were. Oh, they're all bad. Okay. Thomas Armstrong says this Apple just wants a higher video count. All right. I'm going to remove the All right, I'm going to try this. Let me rule out that just make sure it's not an incompatibility. All right, so I'm going to remove the 80 column card because that's not required for dead test. And I'm going to remove the Z80 card because that's not required for dead test. Although I doubt that's it. And maybe I'll just remove the disk controller because it's not required for dead test. Thomas is asking, all the bits would be an address line. Oh, I mean, I can get into BASIC. Yeah, we can get into BASIC. I mean, it did crash the other day once while I was using BASIC, but hold on. Let me make sure chips didn't work themselves loose. All right, someone asked, can we run Vim test on the chips? We can. Jack says you could just poke some values into zero page and peek them back. I mean, I could if I knew how to do it. I don't. I mean, I have an idea how you would. Um, Hi, Mike's Future Retro. Welcome. Well, someone asked, can we test the memory chips in the retro chip tester? And we can. And that's what I was actually. Oh, thank you to a hardware hacker. Thank you for the five little dollars. Thunderclap. So, all right, let's see what. All right, let's see what the. We'll pick some random ones. Because actually, they shouldn't take that long to test. Yeah, then we'll take a look at me plugging the keyboard back in so that I can type things. I had to disconnect the keyboard to safely remove chips. That one passed. Granted, I do know that them passing in the retro chip tester is not necessarily a sign that they're good. yes, you do have to put the dead test card in a specific slot. Um, I mean, I don't think the slot's sketchy. Besides, it's just a ROM. So if the slot was sketchy, then how would it be able to read the ROM? The dead test, it, the dead test card that I made is just simply a ROM in a ROM card. So if the slot was sketchy, then how would it be able to read the code to actually run dead test? Because that was the correct output for dead test if the zero page had memory errors. I I have honestly replaced so many logic chips in this motherboard. I cannot imagine that I have more bad logic chips. I mean, the dead test card, it is the dead test ROM from Adrian Black's GitHub. It may not be the latest version because I've made this card last year. This is an Apple ROM card that had a damaged switch. So I did replace the switch with the jumper wire so that it would be in the correct position to boot from the ROM. And I did jumper it for a 2716 ROM, which is totally documented, which that is documented in the datasheet for it. So that's, and then that's a 2716 ROM. Jack says the fact you were getting different values on different attempts suggests to me it's not actually RAM. I don't want to get into a ship with Theseus argument about computer. Um, it's still the original logic board. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thomas says if the RAM's good, it's TTL. Well, I only tested 4 RAM chips. I'm getting so tired of just, I don't get. Thomas is asking, does it have an E2 location with question mark? Well, I mean, I'm sure there's an E2 location. Um, E2 is a 74 LSO2. All right, I guess we'll have to start testing TTLs. I'm not pulling all the TTL chips. Okay, let me see if I can't. All right, let me see if I can find the book that I usually use. I don't want to pull all the chips. Okay, so I'm gonna look at the Apple II Plus 2E troubleshooting and repair guide. This board is a close enough clone to the Apple II Plus that the circuit information and the chip locations are 99% the same. I think they did. I think the whoever actually made this clone did change a few of the logic chips, but um, I don't think they're going to be significant for RAM access. All right. Fortunately, though, I don't know what troubleshooting symptom to pick. It's not a display problem. Well, okay. There's a 74LS 139 at E2 and F2 on an Apple II Plus. Oh, this might be the. Oh, this may be the. All right. Let me see if I can figure out where they moved it to. Um. Yeah. Unfortunately, the numbers are going to be upside down because the way they laid this silk screen out. Okay. Um. All right. How about I will test the chips that are at the locations that it said to, but okay, so there is a 74 LSO2 at E2, but there is a 139 at F2, so all right. There we go. All right, so it's a 74 LS 139 at F2. It said well on the Apple II Plus there are 139. All right, well that chip is fine. In fact, that I think all right. Here's a 74 LS 138 at G2. I'll test it. That's testing fine. Okay, let me see what else chips the book said. There's a 74LS20 at D2. Well, that's fine. Said no, then no ROM select. I don't think we have a ROM select issue. It was a 138 at F12. Let me fix these pins here real quick. I don't know why that chip doesn't sit down in the socket very well. It is a it is a 74LS138. Let me test it just to make sure. I doubt the fact that it's not sitting right is. No, it passes. It just sits weird in the socket. There's a 74LS138 right there. Alright, that seems to be fine. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, oh, okay. Thought for a moment there was a bent pin, but no, there's not. Yeah, Thomas, I'm kind of thinking that's the case. Computer just wants more screen time. Yeah, there's not a modern redrawing. CPU failure. Do I have a bad CPU? All right. Well, I don't know why can we not trust the dead test card? Because computer inspector there's not really many diagnostics for the Apple II Plus. That's the problem. Computer inspector not really a great memory test. Dead test actually implements a March test for memory. I mean, there could be a memory problem with this computer. I would hope not, but well, actually, Jack, if you'll remember last week, um, I at one point last week on my live stream, I was trying to type a basic program in, and I actually did get it to crash. I kind of played it off because I was afraid that I'd like unplug the keyboard while it was running, but I had the computer crash. Oh, you weren't there for that part of the stream. I did actually have it crash, and then it seemingly started working. But we were able to play Oregon Trail. But I did have it crash at one point, and I was having trouble typing in a basic program. So I really don't know. Oh, actually, I just some of the RAM chips were loose. All right, all right. I'm gonna plug the dead test in again. Yeah, I know the fact that it's not giving the same error each time is a bit concerning, but all right, I'm gonna try something here. I don't know what the likelihood of it being the cause is. All right. Okay. Yeah, I know that last error claimed that every part of the zero page was bad. I can't explain that. When we find the cause of the problem, we'll be able to explain it. And sure, maybe there is something wrong with dead test. I will admit there could be something wrong with it. But I'm going to take the CPU out because that troubleshooting workflow I was looking at in the Apple II Plus 2E troubleshooting guide did say that if you have intermittent lockups, one of the things could be a bad CPU. And a bad CPU could certainly cause differing access errors each time. So, all right, here's another 6502. Okay, that was a shot in the dark, really. Okay. Okay. I will admit that was a shot in the dark. I will still keep this CPU handy, but all right. We'll put the original one back. I mean, it is a Signetics one, so it's the pins are kind of crummy. But there's probably nothing wrong with it. All right. I don't think you can put an Atari CPU in this. Because it wasn't the Atari 6502, wasn't it actually not a standard 6502? Because it was like a 6502A, which had Atari's changes. All right, let's see here. I'm wondering if it's going to be one of these bus transceiver chips. All right, so this is a, I can't read it. What is that? 74LS245. All right, check the bus transceivers. All right, good night, Sylvestron, or good day, I guess, in your case. What did I say? This was a 250. 245. Oh, I see that jack, but I don't know that I can. I've got what I need to run it. Apple II RAM test utility. Okay. All right. Well, I don't have what I need to run that right now, but Well, Adrian Black's Dead Test is newer than that um, program. I I can try it, but I not probably not tonight. Um I don't have a Thomas says I think the A was for the blazing fast 2 megahertz part. No, I really think the Atari 6502A was I thought the 6502A that the Atari used, I sure thought the A was for Atari or for Antic or something like that. I thought there was a actual difference in the pinout of the 6502A that Atari used versus the um, 6502. I could be wrong. I Jack says I was just looking for a second source of information that might be more trustworthy than Computer Inspector. All right, that would meet my criteria for more trustworthy than Computer Inspector, but it um I don't have a way right this second of getting it on my floppy emu. I'm not sure. I can't read the ink on that chip to see what it is. Oh, Thomas says no. Atari liked the rumor. All right, well then people need to stop spreading that rumor if it's false. 74 LS 367. I sure thought I'd read like newer stuff that even was perpetuating that. All right. So this is the 74 LS 367. Um it's the uh, it's pin compatible with the 1897. All right. Okay. It's not all right. So yeah, Tori used the 6507. That was an odd one. But I think the 6507 was actually in Moss's catalog. All right, so it's not the 367 buffer chips. All right. And Rockwell's, yeah. Jack's asking, are these chips that have never been tested, or are they ones that tested good in the past? They tested good in the past, which is why I was getting aggravated at the thought of having to pull them all to test again. I mean, maybe I test the other, because I only tested like every other DRAM chip. Maybe I. Oh, it would help if I put the RAM chip in. I'm gonna test the other every other because I'm stumped. Because I'm pretty sure this is the first bank. So the zero page would be in these RAM chips. But then again, this board could be backwards from Apple, which would put a bunch of chips I've written M for marginal on, but possibly as the zero page. But I think I figured out at some point that those maybe weren't marginals. Maybe I should, maybe on a, all right, maybe I should check these chips. At one point, I thought they were marginal. I tested the 139s that I found. Note that I can't exactly see the where they I cannot see the silk screen markings of the chips because they are all marked between the sockets in a place I can't see them from my vantage point. So I I think I tested them all, but I might have missed one. But not all the 139s are used in the memory circuit. That's an NEC memory chip there. Oh, wait a minute. Well, I just found a bad memory chip. Well, that memory chip's failing pretest. All right, so maybe I got where bank the zero page was wrong because I think on the app. Well, that one's testing bad. I don't remember, Jack. I don't remember what was happening with them. But yeah, that one's. Well, maybe the reason why the zero page bits were always changing is because I got a bank of RAM chips that are. That one failed. Well, that one bit zero failed. So what about this first one here that had an M on it for marginal? It actually is working. Weird. Yeah, the dots are my marking. I put a dot on them if I just put a dot on them to mark that I'd tested them. I realize that's not a green dot, but that was to denote that I tested it. It should be a passing RAM chip. So I just pulled 5 of the 6 marginal chips out. They fail, either they fail the pretest or they fail a bit. Uh, I don't think YouTube allows a video that long. Well, that chip's failing. That's weird. I think I know where the 0 page is. I bet the 0 page is actually in this row of chips. I'll have to go find. All right, I know I've got some 4116s somewhere. All right, that one passed. All right, I know how to figure out if that's actually the 0 page or not. No, that's not, because otherwise it wouldn't have powered up. It would be curious to know, now that I pulled those 6 chips out, if I put the dead test back in, now that I pulled those 6 chips that failed testing. No, it's still showing a 0 page error. And of course, the bits that it showed were working are not the same ones as that. So yeah, they weren't the same bits. That's weird. All right, so I got 6 RAM chips that are not testing correctly in the retro chip tester. I really don't want to steal them from my other working clone board, but these are AM90160 PC. Okay, I think these are 4116s. No, I'm restoring this. All right. All right. Yeah, I think these AM9016s are some that Sloopy gave me from an Atari. He had some spare memory chips. I'm pretty sure they're all good, and I don't have any reason to believe that they. Well, I mean, they could have failed in storage, but I just realized I got another row of NEC memory chips. All right, that one passed. All right, so let me replace these memory chips, and we'll try dead test again. Maybe no these are replacements because these are all AMD memory chips. So these are replacements. These are the original chips. They're NEC. And actually, all the ones that were in this row were also NEC, so I think they were original memory chips. So I think there were 2 rows of original memory chips. So these 6 that I just pulled out because they failed in the retro chip tester are original memory chips. So I may need to pull this row and test. Okay, so that's a good one. It is possible that maybe this row was 0 page, and maybe with so many RAM chips missing, it could have had trouble deciphering which bits were bad. Jack says, I didn't realize you'd found so many original chips that work. I think that's why I think now that I think about it, the M's are on some of the original chips. I think they were marginal when I tested them. I don't remember how they were marginal, but it would appear as if 5 of the 6 marginal chips have failed, and it would also appear as one of the ones that tested good failed. So maybe I should just pull all these NEC chips off this board. And I think I did find a tube of 4116s yesterday while searching for something else. It's like a short tube. So it might be enough to displace all the NEC memory chips off this board. But let's see if I can get it so that Dead Test isn't complaining about the 0 page. Unfortunately, this uses 4116s and not like 4164s. I have plenty of 4164s. I'll get once I actually figure out. I'll pull the paint marker out, and I'm trying not to conflate markings. Also, it's hard for me to find a spot where you can see the screen on the tester and I still be able to get to the socket. All right, so we'll replace these. We'll see what the board does. Maybe I got to start pulling the NECs out of the next row. Thomas says you can still get 4116s from Arcade Chips for $1. Send me a link. I'm pretty sure I. That way, I'll go check it out. Okay, so dead test. All right, that was not it. Hmm. All right. Still complaining about a zero page. Jack says, "Why don't you swap the chips in the row you just replaced with the chips in the row that you think contains the zero page?" Because I haven't gotten there yet. Okay. So I'm sorry if I kind of. It seems like I'm getting tired of swapping chips. It's like every time I look at this computer, it. I don't know. I don't know. I thought we would fix the Saturn clone card, get an easy win, and although it does seem like there was bad RAM on the Saturn clone card, well, apparently somehow there's something bad on this motherboard. That all right. So I'm just not going to install these. I'm not going to install these chips at this moment. Access, to be fair, you may have fixed the Saturn clone card. We just don't know yet. I mean, maybe I have, maybe I haven't. I don't know. I just thought maybe so. I thought somewhere along the past. That's still a zero page error. Zero page RPDRR zeros. I've got to look at the GitHub to see what that means. Hold, please. because that error was slightly different. Okay, Apple II dead test, diagnostic ROM. So on an actual Apple II, row C is bank 0. All right. Okay, what was the beep pattern? Oh, that is totally annoying. And now it's just running. Yeah, that was a different error. Yeah, this is what it's supposed to look like when it runs the test. Is the power supply causing issues still? Well, it could be. It's also possible the power supply, when the cap popped, I mean, maybe I maybe the NEC chips didn't like losing the bias voltage. Yeah, that was exactly what it was supposed to look like. That is that is just weird. And I'm running the latest version of the dead test. Yeah, so this power supply, when I tested it last week, I had apparently put two caps in backwards because the silk screen was wrong, and that it was the two negative rails that lost their cap. Nope, 4116 requires minus 12 and plus 5. Yeah, 4116s require the negative bias voltage. 4164s internally generate it. Yeah, plus 5, minus 5, and minus 12. And I believe I lost both the minus 5 and minus 12 volt rails. Now, why it just started running the memory test after just a power cycle after we got that weird bus error of no bad bits, I don't know. Thomas says the old 4096s just blew up. Yeah. Jack says, what issues could be happening at power on? Bad cap somewhere. Well, I have completely recapped the power supply. There are no electrolytic caps on computer. They're all ceramics. Save for a few, I think, might be polymer caps, but they're like really low value. So I don't think there's anything to recap on computer because they're all ceramics. My best guess would be that there could still be a bad logic chip. I'm tempted to power cycle here and leave it off for. Yeah, I'm gonna make sure. It's also possible that maybe I was. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, I know 4116s take time to clear, but I thought I was leaving it off between attempts while troubleshooting it. All right, I gotta. Okay, let's try this. So this must be zero page, and I guess I've got 8 good chips in zero page now. Although I may replace these two NECs with an AMD because I do have some AMDs. I guess let me put these chips that were probably in the zero page before. Back in, and maybe dead test will actually run, and maybe we'll find that I've got a bad memory chip. And maybe it's possible I will just have to put the Apple power supply back in. Maybe this power supply isn't reliable. That is possible. Wouldn't be the first time I bought something because it was aesthetically the correct choice, and aesthetic aesthetics yes, functionality no. All right. That is certainly. So we got a zero page error and then a power cycle and it takes off. Yeah, Jack says I'm not prematurely blaming the PSU. I'm just trying to reason through the most likely cause of these odd symptoms. I mean, bad RAM could cause odd symptoms. Bad CPU could cause odd symptoms. I guess I'm not entirely sure that the CPU is. Oh, I power cycled it fairly quickly. Maybe you didn't see it. I could tell it was a zero page error because of the sounds, and I saw it on my screen. Maybe I power cycled it too quick, but I did see it on my screen that there was a 0 page error with a couple bits. Okay. Alright, I will try not to power cycle so quick, but it is a quarter till 12, and I do need to be at work early in the morning, so that uh maybe we'll be looking at computer some more Thursday, because now I'm really curious. And I guess I'll have to probably crack out the oscilloscope, because I am quite curious why we're getting 0 page errors. Jack says, I think the question in my mind is what happens immediately after power on that causes errors that don't persist when you quickly power cycle. Power supply could cause that. But anyways, all right. I think at this point I am stumped. How stumped am I? I'm stumped enough to say that we're looking at computer again Thursday. So I'm going to put my thinking cap on as to what could cause these symptoms, given the fact that there's no electrolytic caps on the board. It could be the power supply. I guess that would be one thing if I can. I don't know that I can get the oscilloscope probe down in the power connector, but maybe we can find a way to. Thomas Armstrong says coming out of reset too early. That could cause it. Yeah, that could cause it. Maybe I got a 555 timer problem. Because I think the Apple II uses a 555 timer for the reset circuit. Yeah, that test is running. So, anyways, I guess I'm going to put my thinking cap on as to what could cause these symptoms. Thursday, as soon as I can get a chance to change the thumbnail, we will be looking at computer some more. I'll even crack out the Zoe multimeter that Jason sent. I'll try to find a way to actually make sure I have figure out a way where I can maybe probe the voltage rails so we can watch them. I also see if I can't look up a schematic to refresh my memory as to how the reset circuit works. So, anyways, yep. Glad you all could join me. So, anyways, Thursday, more computer, and then maybe next week we'll get to something other than computer. But and then the week after next week, I will be not streaming for a week. And if I got my yeah, I should have my week straight at this point. And then after that, I'll be back. Um, Although I do know that Memorial Day is a Monday, as it always is. And I did say I was going to change my streaming schedule to Mondays in May, but I do have some things around the house I need to do Memorial Day, so I may move streaming to Tuesday that week and just start later than I usually would like. So, anyways, yes, computer is a mind puzzle. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of it at some point. So it'll also give me a little extra time to maybe dig up some extra logic chips or whatnot. Just trying to make sure I've got things to where they are not going to fall off the workbench, because I am going to basically leave them where they are. So with that, don't forget to smash that like button if you like it when I try to get these old computers working. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you know when I go live next. The coffee tip jar does help me buy RAM chips, because computer seems to be consuming them at a faster than usual pace. After all, if my count is correct, I failed 18 this week alone in computer. 12 that were on this board, and 6 that were on the motherboard. So Jack says maybe you should clone the clone board. I mean, funny you say that. I have another Apple II clone board, and I did install ROMs in it, and I used the ROMs from computer to make the clone. After all, I did figure that worst comes to worst, I wanted to at least make sure the ROMs survived. But anyways, with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining me, hanging out in the chat, being cool, putting up with me as I mem tested and then got brain tested by the computer. And with that, I hope to see you all here Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern. So with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Take care and God bless. Computerized Start is brought to you by my awesome patrons on Patreon, and by your tips and memberships on Ko-fi. These and other channel supporters make my live streams possible. You too can become a channel supporter with tiers starting at just $1. Don't forget to smash that like button. And if you've liked what you've seen, subscribe and turn on notifications so that you don't miss the next video or live stream. And as always, thank you for all your support. I hope to see you next time. And until then, take care.